We're back, and today we're joined by Keith Graves and our in-house Mad Bomber, Mike. Let's jump straight in with your conflicted question of the day.
Okay, conflicted question of the day. After months of bugging out with your best friend, you realize that the food and water supply is getting low. And upon further investigation, you find that your best friend has been selling the food and water that you have for money and ammunition, but not telling anyone else. He's putting you and your family at risk as well as himself. How would you handle his betrayal? That's a fun one, and we're going to ask everybody to mull that over, and we will put our answers at the end of this video.
Doesn't sound like much of a good friend to me, best friend. All right, so let's jump right in. We've got some updates as far as terrorist activity is concerned affecting us here in the homeland. The first topic that we're going to discuss is on Friday. There's a radical Muslim preacher in Dearborn, Michigan, who has been counseling people to rise up and act out forms of jihad against us here in the homeland. And he's done this multiple times in the past. This is not a new thing. So, Keith, I want to jump straight in with you because it immediately in my mind, I'm thinking, why are we letting this guy promote terrorist activity here in the homeland?
Good question. Big thing is a lot of people say you should arrest him. He's violating a crime. Awesome. What's the section? I love hearing that. People will always say, well, he needs to get arrested. Why haven't the police arrested him yet? What's the section? Okay. And what the section means is we have the Constitution, but outside of the Constitution, you have laws. And then everything from battery to murder to what have you. And that's what you get arrested for. So here, he's protected by the First Amendment, right? So there is because if we made a law that says he could be arrested for saying these things, well, then it would be a violation of the First Amendment. And the best example I can give you was there was a group, everybody knows I'm a Christian, right? Christian warrior training. I'm a God-fearing man. And there was a group called Cry to God that came to our city. And go look them up online. They are misinterpreting the Bible. They would come out and they would proselytize on a very busy area. And I remember on this one specific day, there was a benefit for a kid dying from leukemia. And they're up there proselytizing saying, your son is dying because your wife is a whore and you're a masturbator. And I'm listening to this, and as a Christian man, I'm listening to this going like, are we reading the same Bible? Because I don't think we are, right? You can't have a biblical conversation with them because they have their own distorted view. And people are saying you need to arrest them. There's literally nothing I can do. This is all protected speech. We may not like it. I certainly don't like it, but it's protected. The only time that you could arrest somebody is if I said, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you tomorrow at 2 when you walk out of your house with my shotgun. I'm going to take that shotgun and I'm going to blow you away because I'm tired of that. I'm tired of whatever you're doing. Very specific.
Wouldn't be the first person to say that to me.
And it's very specific. And I'm making a threat. There's sections for that. And it's actually, it depends on which state you're in. Basically, it's assault, which people say assault is like punching somebody. Actually, assault is like a verbal threat. And then there's battery, where you're actually beating somebody. But I'm giving a threat that you're fearing for your life. Clearly, we can do that. Now, the IMOM, or whatever this guy really is. How you're going to get this guy, you're not going to get him through a speech. Right? You're going to open up an investigation on him, and you're going to go for everything else that you can. And we did talk about this offline a little bit. Tax evasion, weapons charges, like whatever. You're going to get them for whatever you can that's outside of that. Your speech, you can say whatever you want. You can't get away from the consequences of that speech that you're doing, ultimately.
So this guy's a known dirtbag. In 2004, he got wrapped up in Detroit. He and his father were convicted of conspiracy, bank fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, failure to file income tax returns, and felon in possession of firearms and ammunition. He did 6.5 years in Terre Haute for that, released in 2012. He has been a big problem going all the way back to the 1995 World Trade bombings.
And we obviously don't like his speech, right? We hate it. But you can't, I'll give an example. Going back to Cry to God, my city actually passed a law to counter these guys by saying you can only practice free speech between 6 and 8 p.m. in groups of 2 or more at a specific park on Wednesdays.
Is it free then?
And like we're sitting in this meeting as they're putting out, we're like, wait a minute. And I actually wrote an article on how cops defy unconstitutional orders. and I profiled this specific case. Like, we get unconstitutional orders, not all the time, but enough in your career that you're like, hey, man, I'm not doing that. But you never hear about that, right? But the city specifically made this law to counter that. And we told them, like, hey, we're not doing that. That's unconstitutional. But sure enough, somebody like a supervisor went out there and did arrest them for violating this. He got sued. The city got sued. We lost horribly, which you would expect, right? So the feds can come out and pass a law that said, for this IMOM specifically, say, well, you can't do this speech, but you're going to lose in federal court. You're going to get sued. There's going to be all sorts of consequences with it. But that's not how you're going to get the guy. Just go out and open up an investigation for terrorism-related things. Oh, then they'll open up a wiretap, and the next thing you'll get them on something else. Right.
Quick, let's use FISA laws. That's never screwed anybody over in the past.
Which
they use that on us,
renewed.
buddy.
Yeah, which we just renewed, right, last week in Congress.
Do you want premium ad-free content? Duh. Content that's not censored by big tech, of course. Well, with SD Insider, you can get behind the scenes and a whole lot more. Link in the description.
Maybe another episode we should talk about this. I did write an article about how people should be talking securely, because I am seeing an overreaching government that I've never seen like as much as they are right now. It does concern me. They're using it against cops significantly. So there was recently 2 officers fired in the Northwest Police Department, where their department used proceeds from an illegal wiretap to fire these officers for exercising a constitutional amendment. And they'll get their job back, but they're using it to weed out good cops that may not be part of the agenda they want. If they're doing it to us, when are they going to do it to you? Right? We probably should do that. Talk about like talking in a secure environment, like how to talk secure. Like I titled it "How to Talk Like a Drug Dealer" because I literally use what drug dealers use. And I'm like, well, it works because I can't find their communications. I'm investigating these like high level cartel guys. Well, I guess I can't find out what they're saying. I guess I should start talking like them and start using their methods.
You got to pull the clip from Goodfellas. Hey, I gotta go talk to the guy. The first guy? No, the other guy. Oh, and we got to talk about the thing. Which thing? Yeah, it's a great scene, and there's actually a lot of communication that happens there. There's no overt information spilling out.
Yeah, we use apps like Signal is a great app. Threema. They've all had breaches of security, but they haven't been able to get critical information that you would worry about, Proton Mail, that kind of stuff. But this IMOM, going back to him, we should be concerned about his speech because he has a history of inciting people and inspiring people, and we should be concerned about that. But that speech, if we shut down his speech, then they're going to shut down my speech for talking about Jesus, spreading the gospel. I'll lose my right to say that. But we got to be careful. Right. Don't be mad at that. Ask why they're not opening an which we don't. They probably do have an investigation, but like, you want them to open up an investigation for something else? I guarantee you somebody's already looking at it for something.
This guy's got ties to Al-Nusra, ISIS, Hamas, the PIJ. Yeah, guarantee you there's at least 4 federal agencies that have got their eyeballs on this dude's head all the time.
The best thing you can do is take one of those 80,000 IRS agents and assign it to this guy. And I can guarantee you they'll make a connection somewhere.
Guarantee it. This dude's a dirtbag. Yeah, this dude's a dirtbag, and he's definitely going to wind up tripping on his own tongue.
One of the recent reports from the FBI sometime over the course of the past few months actually called out Dearborn, Michigan as the epicenter of domestic terrorism, but of course they think we're domestic terrorists being middle-aged white males. But as far as foreign terrorist threats are concerned, they specifically called out Dearborn as ground zero for these guys. So we definitely.
And I talked to the cops. I for people who are just coming on, I train cops for my full-time job. And I do a lot of training up in Michigan, Minnesota, those areas. And those cops were all telling the stories they're telling me about stuff coming out of those communities. We should all be concerned. After I did a video on Hezbollah, I had numerous JTTF agents, Joint Terrorism Task Force agents, all coming out telling me, spot on. This is exactly what's happening. And we should all be afraid. We know it's happening. We know something's going to happen. When the FBI, look, man, the FBI, I have them come in as students every once in a while. And the FBI administration obviously has issues. We all know that. And personally, I think they have some cowardice. For them to come out and say that churches and synagogues are going to get hit, that there is going to be an event in the United States. Look, man, it's going to happen. they're saying that because they're trying to get ahead of it because they can't control it and they can't stop it. And they know it's going to happen. And they want to be able to go back and say, oh, look at this soundbite where we told you this was going to happen.
We told you so.
And they're doing it because they're cowards. They are spinning, like when you go to a JTTF was Joint Terrorism Task Force. It's FBI plus all the different federal agencies plus local law enforcement. They all come together and fight. And so they're supposed to fight terrorism. JTTF supervisors have been going around to COP conferences to give updates on stuff in the United States. And prior to the Israeli invasion, or not the Israel, but the Hamas invasion into Israel. Before that date, just a couple weeks before, I would be at conferences and I'd watch JTATF supervisors giving briefings where all it was talking about us, middle-aged white men, conservative, talking about warning signs of terror. They said, quote, we are not worried. This is just a few months ago. I watched a JTTF supervisor say, we're not worried about Middle Eastern terrorism anymore. The problem is right-wing extremism. And all cops are conservative for the most part. And we're all looking like, are you kidding me? And then they start displaying the signs, which we've all seen the videos in the papers, and it's the Gadsden flag, 3% flag, 1776 flag, like the Betsy Ross flag, all that kind of stuff. And we're all looking at that. And I remember in one of them that I was in, this cop holds up his backpack and he literally had morale patches of every warning sign. He's like, so I'm a terrorist. And he holds it up and everybody in the group's like, everybody's clapping and they're literally you have local law enforcement clowning the FBI and and then the invasion happens. And then now they're coming out to say, oh, be careful because churches and synagogues are going to get hit. Yeah, because you've been asleep at the wheel because you were worried about attacking us and not going after the real thing. America is in a lot of trouble. One of the things I end my videos with is ABC. Remember your ABCs. Always be carrying, right? You need to always be carrying. Even, I don't want to tell you to do anything illegal. That would be wrong. But if you were carrying in a state that didn't allow it, like how would the police ever find out until you got into a shooting, right? And then you got to deal with the consequences of that. But how would anybody ever know? You really need to be careful, man. Obviously, something's going to pop off. Where's it going to be? There's your reach, Chris. I think is at least 1 million people a month on your platform, right?
Yeah, we average actually about 1.5 million. Unique viewers per month.
So 1.5 million views per month. The odds of at least one person here being involved in a critical incident and something that we're talking about is pretty good. Is it going to happen to you or is it going to happen to the other guy that's watching this?
I don't disagree. Just to back up for a second, I think the whole FBI thing saying that white middle-aged guys are the threat is just another example of Obama's weaponization of the legal system.
And we were discussing that before this about the what's the big problem? Is it the rank and file FBI? Probably not. It's the government system where you have a problem child. You can't fire him. So what do? You get him off your plate by promoting him out. Well, the problem is now the entire agency's headquarters, as well as most of DOJ, is now populated by all those problem children that you promoted out.
And they're coming to your backyard because I think the last thing I heard on this new FBI headquarters is that it's going to be in Alabama.
What they're doing is, well, what it all came down to is the Marine Corps got basically sick of their crap and has kicked everything but headquarters, the actual full up headquarters and the academy out of Quantico.
Really?
They're moving them down here because the Marines were like, we need some of our land back and you guys are soaking up too much of it and you guys are bad neighbors. So so they're all moving. They're building a big new facility down here about 45 miles away.
So I worked with FBI. During my career, I worked drug investigations. And I did work with FBI, I don't want to say frequently, but enough over my entire career. And they were always, I don't want to say inept. They just weren't that good, right? Because and I want to go back, the majority of agents, the field level guys, have been pretty cool. If you talk to them one-on-one, they don't like what's going on either. But my question to them is always like, when I ask them, I'm like, dude, what's going on with your agency? They'd be like, man, I don't know. My next question is, why aren't you doing anything to fix it? Right? They need to have a revolt at the line level, which they may be. We will never hear about it. They'll keep it quiet amongst even the agents because they don't have go back to the First Amendment. Cops, agents, people in the military, you don't have a First Amendment right. You can't speak up because you want good order, right? The agency has always been inept, and it's because you hire these guys. The primary requirement is that you have a college degree, and then you hire them, and then you put them in an investigatory position. to where they're doing wiretaps, critical investigations, national security issues. Like, whereas for like your local law enforcement, it took me 5 years to become a detective, and that was quick. That was like lightning fast. And I got it because I worked hard. And then I went through a bunch of schooling, and then I got a bunch of experience. And then I finally went on. Most guys don't make detective 8-10 years, right? But you're not going to, a lot of people don't want to become an FBI agent. They'll accept law enforcement, but then I got to go through an academy again. I got to take a ginormous pay cut because I don't get brought in at my normal pay. Regular cops don't want to become FBI because they have a bad name, but then also I'm going to have to take a pay cut and go through an academy again. I've been through that BS before. I don't want to do it again. And then so it's incentivized. And then the other thing is, even if I have 10 years experience as a cop and have this experience as a detective, if I don't have a college degree, I'm not going to get hired. And that's a wrong way of thinking. The military with officers, you can only become an officer if you have a college degree. No, man, what? College degree doesn't make you a great leader. It just means you're smart. And even then, I've seen some pretty dumb people with PhDs. But the FBI has got some major problems with the way they're doing this. If they just said, hey, we want to hire experienced cops only, and a college degree doesn't mean anything, you'll get some phenomenal people.
That's a ginormous rabbit hole that we could go down.
Sorry.
Yeah.
No, don't apologize at all. It's that we're hamstringing both private and public entities and preventing them from hiring the best person for the job based on things like a garbage degree on imaginary gender studies or some bullshit like that.
Well, and CIA does the exact same thing. Like every frigging 20 years, they'll go through the whole cycle and they'll be like, oh, these street guys that we've got, they're a liability. We need to hire all these kids fresh out of college, and then we'll replace these guys. And then they lose all their experience, and then they wind up having to bring in contractors to do street guy stuff.
9/11, man. 9/11, they hit us hard. They hit the narcotics officer community hard, trying to recruit us to become CIA. And I remember asking one of the recruiters, I'm like, why us? And he's like, you have informants, you flip people all the time. This is exactly what CIA does. And he's like, this is what you would do. And I'm like, oh, that makes sense.
You know how to put a twist on somebody.
Quite a few of my friends ended up taking that up, and they had good careers. But that's what you want, right? Not a guy with a college degree with no experience.
Until you get a guy up there who says, who just got pressure on him from the White House or something like that. You've got to change things. Well, he's not a street guy, so he only knows, look at all these people here that don't have college degrees. Let's get rid of them.
Well, let's go back to the IMOM for a minute, because that's what we originally, before we went down the rabbit hole, the FBI is going to investigate it. I guarantee with these statements, the FBI is going to start looking at them. Well, you have a bunch of guys with college degrees, and their only experience has been get a college degree, become a detective, and then start investigating crimes. They have no experience of like being in the trenches, understanding how these things work. Example, I had a mosque on my beat. I would go over there and talk, and they talk differently to us than they would the FBI. And you go over and talk to them, and you learn all these things, and you get in depth, and you learn things that you never had learned before. For them to investigate it, imagine just the guys with a bunch of college degrees that all go into groupthink, and the guys with other college degrees with no street experience are now training those guys. And you have generations of that, and now they're looking into the IMOM. I don't have a lot of faith, man.
No, neither do I. Suffice it to say, at the end of the day, you said it best at the beginning, that we need to pay attention to these radicals and what they say. They're telling us who they are and what their agenda is. And whether it's a First Amendment issue or not a whole lot of faith that federal law enforcement is going to crack down on this. How many times has there been some sort of incident, like an active killer situation or whatnot? It's 99.999% of the time, the FBI comes back and says, this person was known to us.
Say the words. On our radar. The one thing that I have to say about this guy, Imam Ahmad Musa Jibril. So this dude, he's a known very outspoken proselytizer. Right? How many dirtbags that are associated with this guy are not really big, outspoken guys, and they're just trying to make business happen. They're actually trying to actually make missions happen, and this guy keeps on speaking up. How many of them are affiliated with this guy?
Yeah, how many disciples does he have that he's trained and then?
His big thing is he's pushing out for people that have never even met him, people that follow him on social media, stuff like that. And that's how you get your lone wolves, right? That's how you get your lone wolf attackers. And if you can do that, man, it is cheap to do. It's a great way to do it. But in this case, you got that as a threat. But then what are his buddies doing? That's what I want to know, right? This dude, he's been nabbed. Whatever security organization they have working for them, you've got to know that they're like, no, we got to keep him separated. He can go ahead and he can continue to proselytize, but he can't be actually involved in any of our operations that are going on.
Mm-hmm.
If they have half a brain, all right, and we've all seen some of these dirtbags don't have half a brain, but with these guys up there in Michigan, they've shown in the past that they've got their act together fairly well as far as tradecraft goes.
They're very organized for sure. So that was one of three topics that we wanted to give an update on. The next one is right in your wheelhouse, Mike, that there were 10 IEDs intercepted that were fixing across the southern border. And I know you've done a bunch of research. You've spoken to some people for firsthand experience with this. What's going on with IEDs at the border?
These were not attempting to be smuggled across the border. They were just in the border zone.
Okay.
Everything that I'm getting on these, all amateur night stuff. Basically, somebody stripped out a bunch of fireworks and made their own IEDs out of the stuff. It's pretty chintzy stuff. It's low tech. It's probably just for use in the border zone area. Dirtbags on dirtbags predominantly. Okay. Maybe something to throw at the federales. I don't know. Predominantly speaking, in Mexico, the majority of the IED work that has been happening down there, it looks mostly low end stuff. We're seeing stolen mining explosives used, things like that, which are not high brisance explosives. They're not high energy. They're pushing stuff, right? They're meant to push. They're not meant to cut. So what we're looking at predominantly is fairly low tech, fairly easily dealt with, probably 4 or 5 generations old as far as IEDs are concerned to folks like me. We do see a few high tech IEDs being used down there, but almost predominantly those are being used on assassinations, either assassinations of government officials that won't play ball, or on cartel violence. Those have signatures. We've seen a lot of the components and stuff like that. We know who's teaching these guys to do this stuff, but in this case, they're very, very rare.
The CBP issued a warning last week after these 10 IEDs were found, saying that the potential for weapons of mass destruction to come across southern borders pretty significant. Dirty bombs, that sort of thing. We know we got the chemicals here. We've covered that in depth, all the different fentanyl analogs and whatnot. What's your take? And Keith, what's your take? Because you've worked an entire career of fighting criminal organizations like the cartels. What is the prospect of something greater than just fentanyl coming across the border, something that could be used as a dirty bomb or anything to that extent? Have we actually caught anything at the border, or have we caught something inside the country and been able to trace it back to this activity or this type of activity?
You have one specific incident off the top of my head. There's one incident where in Tijuana, there was a guy preparing to cross the border. I can't remember the guy's name, but he was Hezbollah trained, said he worked for Hezbollah. He had grenades, hand grenades. He had full auto M16s, good training from Hezbollah. He got popped by the Mexican authorities, and it came out during the investigation he was obviously Hezbollah backed, ready to cross the border.
Yeah, that guy was a facilitator.
Yes.
Was he trained by Hezbollah in Mexico?
Yes.
This is like the terrorist being embedded with.
I don't know if he was trained in Mexico.
I don't know that. Yeah, that I don't know, but we know he was trained. Of course, sources and methods and stuff, you wind up getting everything a little bit screwy, but he was. And our rule in Iraq was you catch one, there's 9 more that you didn't come across, right? You're going to wind up having to deal with them later. So the stuff is there. The stuff has come across. And some of the stuff that has been made over there, that has been brought across or has been manufactured here. We have seen several instances where IEDs were used here down to the Texas border and also in, I think, Arizona for going after local government officials that weren't playing ball. And then there was that one where that dude rolled a couple of hand grenades into a bar down there in Eagle Pass. That was not very nice. Now, thank God. Thank God neither of them worked, but because you have to pull the pins.
And we do have cartel and cartel violence in the United States. We'll talk about Hezbollah in a second, but we have cartel and cartel violence in the United States happening here where they're throwing grenades at each other. We know law rockets, M72 laws have come across the border. They've been used against other people. In fact, we know that happens with the Hells Angels, just have blown up other clubhouses with M72s. And then we know that Hezbollah, Hamas type people are coming across the border routinely as SIA, special interest aliens. I've talked to people in JTTF, Joint Terrorism Task Force, that told me they routinely are doing investigations on people that come across with Farsi tattoos, Hezbollah, Hamas literature, people that only speak Farsi that are coming across. They're obviously being brought in here. And of course, we know that with that, we already know that the grenades, laws, other things are coming in here.
Well, backing up to Mike's comment, there's an old adage that if you have a rat infestation, every rat that you catch, there's 100 more that exist. So I'm just trying to get a feel for how this may be applicable. So for argument's sake, we catch a handful of Hezbollah agents coming across the southern border. I think it's kind of safe to assume that there's a whole bunch we didn't catch. Is that a safe assumption?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. We're catching them on the interior. So Border Patrol used to have interior border protection. Like when I first became a cop, we actually had a Border Patrol station in the city next to us. And I was up in the San Francisco Bay Area. And we routinely could call the Border Patrol and they would come pick people up. We don't have that anymore. Everybody, I think it was early mid-90s, they brought everybody out to the border. So they canceled all the interior programs. Everybody went to the borders, no more interior. I know we contact people all the time that are obviously here illegally. We see that they're from the Middle East. They obviously came across the border. We ask them, how'd you get here? Across the border, right? They paid a coyote to come across. We make a phone call to ICE, and that's our only option. Right, or Homeland Security is our only option. And there's really nobody that's going to come respond and come take that guy. And what we always got was, just get his info and then send it to us and we'll follow up. And we're never going to see this guy again.
Now he's on the radar, right?
Well, I remember stopping a guy that was on a terrorist watch list. I run him, and the way it works is like you run somebody's name to see if they have warrants or wanted or whatever. I look at this guy and I'm like, you're hinky as hell. Like he's a Middle Eastern dude. It's right after I don't want to say right after 9/11, but a couple years after 9/11. And I'm like, this ain't right. I run him and I'm starting my investigation, just a regular car stop. And right away, dispatch calls me and says, FBI's on the phone. They want to talk to you. And obviously, like when you run them, it's in a national database. And before the dispatcher told me before they got the return, they got a call from FBI. Right. And then it showed when they got the return, terrorism watch list. They gave me that info. And they were straight up like, just go ahead and let him go. And then we'll follow up. Just make sure you forward us tickets or anything like that. I'm like, no, man, I'm talking to him on his cell phone. I'm like, I'm not going to let this guy go. What are you talking about? And then we talk about arresting people for other things, right? So here I arrested him for not having a driver's license. You rarely do. You usually just give him a ticket, no license, and send him away. But it is an arrestable offense, but you normally don't arrest people for that. You just give them a ticket. I was like, man, no way. You're in custody. I'm going to hook you up. I'm going to take you to jail. And then when I go to the jail, normally they would release him right away. And hey, man, I got a call from the FBI. He's on a terrorism watch list. And they're like, oh, and like, we don't have to say anything. It's all been said. They're going to take him. He's going to go into the system. And we're not doing anything illegal. It's, no, man, you're going to have to post bail. Do we have the option to site release you? Absolutely. But we're not going to. And then basically what we're doing is we're forcing the FBI's hand of like, no, man, we took him into custody. We took his car and towed his car. So you can go all lawful. There's laws that say that we can all do this. Go look at his car for whatever you look for that I don't know what to look for, and then go pick him up at the jail. And that's what they did. And we're forced their hand. But that stuff happens. That's routine.
You spent decades in law enforcement and in an area that was so-called sanctuary city, lots of illegals and stuff. Just out of curiosity, was there ever an instance where you apprehended somebody who was on a terrorism watch list and the feds actually came and collected that person?
They always ask for info. And they'll sometimes be like, oh, well, I don't want to give away everything here, but they'll tell us to do certain things. But ultimately, you're letting this guy go. And that doesn't sit well for me. Here's the thing. Like, if I'm looking at a guy for like a high level drug dealer, I put him in the system so that if other narcotics detectives, when they get a guy, they put him in a system. That way we don't hurt each other, right? It's deconfliction. Okay. And they put us in touch. I put him in the system. I don't put him in the system unless I want, we're going to do something with this guy. You got him right now. I'm coming right now. And I'm going out there. I don't put him in the system unless I want him right now. Are they doing it because they're fishing, right? Or was there a legitimate need? If it's fishing, we definitely shouldn't be doing this for fishing. But if you put him in the list, I expect that you're going to come out because he's important enough for you to let me know. Then you should like do something. Well, and they're not doing that.
We're back to Mike's comment. He was on our radar.
Right.
But no action taken on that.
Now, we did we were involved in a completely inadvertent, just bad luck on this dude's part, pickup back in the 90s. And dude was coming up I-35 on his way to Chicago, and it goes from Brownsville all the way to Chicago. And yeah, just bad luck. Nobody knew dude was in the country, and they were like, we were there dealing with our portion of it because he wrecked his car and there was a whole bunch of hand grenades scattered all over the place. And yeah, the Phoebe showed up about 3 seconds after the Rangers got there, or Ranger got there, and it was on. That was actually a really funny thing, watching the Rangers and the Phoebes go at who was going to get him first. Because the Phoebes wanted this dude bad.
What's funny is, like, not to get into a rabbit hole, but just so people understand how the system works, federal agents don't make a lot of on-view arrests, meaning I see this guy committed a crime and I'm going to arrest him. Okay. They always wait for the attorney general to issue a warrant and then go do this. And they're always ask us, hey, can you pick them up on state charges and we'll pick them up later? Oh, so you want me to do all the work? And then you're going to go ahead and take my report and then you're going to use that to go get, which I'm fine with because I'd much rather have federal charges because they're much more harsh. But it's just weird. Like, the first time that ever happened, they're like, hey, can you just pick him up on state charges? I'm like, dude literally has 40 pounds of meth. Like, can you just pick him up? They're like, oh, this is the way it works. And they're honest. They're the most screwed up system. I've got to go do this or that. And you're like, what? And like, literally, I'm just used to hooking people up. And then it's weird, man. I don't get it. Not all federal agencies are like that, but FBI, DEA, the big ones.
Well,
watch your head, sir.
I'm not a subject matter expert on this like you are, Keith. I can tell you that a very close friend of mine many years ago, Bradley County, Tennessee, right on I-75 north of Chattanooga, they consolidated all of the first responders into one building. So sheriff, paramedic, and fire. And he was outside shortly after they consolidated everybody, and the sheriff had just made this huge bust of this drug runner coming from South Florida heading towards Detroit, and there was hundreds of thousands of dollars of cash and all kinds of drugs and whatnot. And Lane asked this cop, with the volume of traffic on I-75, how did you just pluck this guy out of that many cars? And the sheriff said, well, that's easy. We get warned in advance by the feds that somebody matching this description in this vehicle, may even have the tag number, is coming through your jurisdiction on such and such a day. We want you to apprehend them. You can keep all the proceeds. Like, if there's cash on hand, you can have the vehicle. There'll be plenty for you to charge them with, but we just want to interview the individual so that we can hopefully get to the next layer up. But there were no federal charges laid, is essentially the way that the sheriff laid it out for Lane, which was interesting.
Yeah, it's called a wall stop. And you basically, you get information and you've got to make the stop on your own. You got to find a reason to stop them. You got to find a reason to come up with your own stuff. And then you stop them and you create a wall from the federal investigation, or it could be state, it could be local, but you're creating a wall for the other person's investigation. And then you do your arrest, you find whatever you find, and then turn that over for the other people so they can further their investigation later on. It's actually a useful tactic.
I was going to say, I'm not against this practice. It doesn't strike me as anything bad going on. It was just an example of how the feds will work with the sheriff.
Yeah, but it's another part of that too is the feds also want the info because it's too hard for them to go out and make the stop. Like, to just go make the stop, make a probable cause arrest, and it's much easier to have the cops do it.
That sounds like it. So moving on to update number 3 for this episode of Survival Dispatch News. There's been a lot of activity in the Red Sea. Some bad guys from Yemen, the Houthis, have been using drones to attack commercial ships, some military as well. There was one day in particular last week where, in conjunction with the British, we shot down something like 15 of these drones. And a lot of commercial companies have put a halt to utilizing the Red Sea for passage. Mike, I know you did a bunch of research into this. Let me just preface your comments because I know you're going to give us the real deal. The press on this particular subject basically took the position that we were spending a tremendous amount of money on very expensive munitions to knock these drones out of the sky. And that, number one, we were short on munitions, and number two, we're spending a huge amount of money on this. But I know that you've got the real facts to this. So tell me what your opinion is on these Houthis shooting at our stuff.
So we've got the USS Carney, and the Brits have got the HMS Diamond down there patrolling controlling this strait. And as you said, Maersk, CMA, CMG, Hapag-Lloyd, and MSC have all suspended their Red Sea routes. They are the big shippers in the world. So everybody expects shipping costs to go up for everybody. So that means the price of everything is going to go up some more. Just what we needed, right?
Right.
But Bidenomics has completely beaten recession.
Yeah, there's no more inflation. You didn't get the memo?
Right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
When you leave the grocery with a buggy that's only a third full, that's
double plus good, comrades.
Yeah. That's just a mirage. But Mike,
so anyway,
you dove into the
right.
missiles though that they're using.
Right. So
give us some details on that.
The missiles that the Navy would use for shooting a lot of these down are both SM3s and SM6s. And I gotta say, the crew of the USS Carney are rock stars down there, man. Those guys guys and gals have just been killing it. They're doing a great job. They've shot down drones. They've shot down cruise missiles. They've shot down anti-ship missiles, and they even shot down a theater ballistic missile.
Your mic volume has dropped tremendously.
I can't do anything about that. I'm just sitting here.
We can barely hear you.
Yeah, they've shot down all kinds of great. Like I said, they even shot down a theater ballistic missile on its way to Israel. Okay, these guys are rock stars. Okay, I love them. So and what we're talking about here, we're talking some fairly expensive. The standard missile systems are fairly expensive. So the SM3 is a fairly old system. They don't manufacture those very much anymore. Replacement cost on one of those would be about $11.8 million a pop.
For one missile?
Okay, for one missile. Okay.
Wow.
Okay. Well, we don't make a whole lot of those anymore. Right. And we've got a humongous stockpile of them. The Navy they stockpiled humongous quantities of those things. But now they've moved over to the SM6 systems. Right. And because they're producing so many of them, replacement on those is only $4.3 million. Only. Hey, but what if you're shooting down a theater ballistic missile with it? By the way, kids, that's especially if you save a carrier in the process of that, or shoot down a hypervelocity missile that's getting ready to nuke a city or something. $4.3 million is a small price to pay.
And what was the price of the SM3?
SM3 was $11.8 million because they don't make them anymore. That's just a replacement cost.
So are you saying that the SM6 is capable of taking down hypersonic missiles?
If it flies, it dies.
Okay.
In conjunction with the Aegis battle system, if it flies, it dies. SM6 isn't missing anything.
Okay.
Hypersonics, everything. It'll kill anything. Sea skimmers, cruise missiles, you name it, it's going after it. A crow that is looking kind of sketchy and might have a message taped to its leg, shoot it down. You can hit it with these things. They're something else, and they are fast. However, there was one thing that I did notice on some of the Department of Defense and Department of the Navy press release. They are always very, very, very to throw out their favorite new Raytheon toy. Oh, we shot this thing down with an SM6 standard missile, and it was great. It performed absolutely perfectly. But then you've got a whole lot of these things, a whole lot of these releases, specifically about the drones or some of the slow cruise missiles or anti-ship missiles that have been fired out there, that they just say we shot them down. And that sort of stood out to me because they're not calling out their favorite toy of the week. And I said, why? And then I started thinking, well, wait a minute. Now, how long has the Carney been sitting down there running racetracks along the Yemeni coast now for at least a couple of months? Ever since she got there, she and the Diamond have just been cruising around. And I have absolutely no backing to this. This is all theory of mine. All right. What if he's possibly one of the ships that has had one of the intercept laser systems? All right. I know the Navy's been messing with it. They actually started mounting a couple of Helios systems onto Arleigh Burke destroyers back in 2000. Additional Helios systems delivered to the Navy in August of 2022. It is a distinct possibility that maybe those things are on board, right? And that is an incredibly cheap way to just shoot stuff down. Light beam.
Yeah, that's really interesting. For the people who missed last Friday's episode of Survival Dispatch News, we had an update regarding a RFP just released by the Pentagon looking for portable EMP weapons specifically to take down drones, so to take the electronics out. And that RFP was released a week after we did a video on fentanyl potentially being used at open air venues to commit terrorist acts here. It was just really interesting that, number one, they're looking at that type of weapon is specifically stated for both domestic and international use. So domestically, take out a swarm of thousands of drones, and then internationally, potentially something like you're discussing, Mike. I know it's EMP and laser, completely different technologies, but a similar idea of being able to rapidly take these drones out of the sky. It seems to me that at one point in time, Mike, you mentioned something as far as underground being the fourth dimension of war. And obviously we've got lots of experience with aerial war, but what we don't have a lot of experience with is these drone swarms being used, whether they're equipped with AI or not, to attack targets that could be, again, both domestic and international. It's kind of a scary prospect. How do you combat 5,000 drones being controlled by one operator or pre-programmed with GPS stuff in them, equipped with AI to drop whatever their payload may be? I'm not a mathematician, but at $4.3 million a piece times 5,000 drones.
Well, the good thing is the warhead on a standard missile is pretty big. You pop that thing off into a drone swarm, and you're probably going to schwack about 20 or 30 of those things. But most of these that the Houthis are shooting are Shahed drones and stuff. So they're just it's basically it's a guided missile with a dude doing the guiding. All right, that's about all it is. They're not shooting, they're not sending swarms at these commercial carriers or anything like that. They're sending just individual drones, cruise missiles.
So if one missile, let's say, could take out 25 of them, and it was a swarm of 5,000 drones, you're basically looking at $1 billion.
Yeah. One thing we talked about too was another reason why they could be dumping money in these missiles and shoot, if it is missiles versus lasers, shooting them down, is the other thing. It could be strategic messaging, and it's to let China, Iran, and other bad actors know, hey man, if you put it up, we're going to kill it. And it's to show them this is what we're capable of, and then now they're bringing in coalition partners in there, other NATO countries, to show interoperability messaging to Russia. I'm not saying this is what's occurring. I'm just one of the possibilities. And it's just a strategic message of, hey, look what we can do. We can destroy anything that you have. You're done. So just don't try it.
That's a good point, Mike. You've got more experience than Keith and I in the Middle East by a long shot. Yemen is reportedly one of the poorest countries in the entire world. Who's behind this? Who's providing?
The Iranians are feeding everything to them.
Okay.
Everything. Yeah, the IRGC has been in there for so long, it's just ridiculous.
So same bad actors, different location.
Same bad guys, just a different place. And them to be able to shut down the Gulf of Aden and everything like that. That's their goal. If they can pair up everything that's going on, if they can interrupt things that are going on and say, oh, it wasn't us, it was those guys. Of course, our guys are those guys. But
well, what's the one thing that we've possessed for a long time and continue to possess is the size of our economy. Well, anything that's done to attack our economy then has detrimental effects on America in general. So I personally feel like the information that you've given us really leads me to believe that they're attacking our economy by doing this and raising prices for everything, not to mention the fact we're spending millions of dollars.
Well, they're not just attacking our economy; they're attacking the world economy, because this is the most heavily used sea lane in the world. They're attacking a lot of stuff. Here's the one question that I had was: freedom of the seas is a big thing, right? Freedom of the seas allows commerce to flow, and we have been all about that since 1805, right? Ask the Barbary Pirates how they feel about us. Who's missing out on a big opportunity to assist with freedom of the seas and freedom of commerce out there are some of the biggest people that are about commerce in the world, and that's where's the People's Liberation Navy?
Right.
Why haven't we seen the Chinese Navy over here helping shoot down stuff? Come on, guys. This is an XP dump. Come on. Just come on over here and mine XP with us. And they're not doing it for some reason. I wonder why. Oh, maybe because their Navy sucks.
Yeah, that's an interesting rabbit hole that you drugged me down last week. That is good content for a future video. But suffice it to say, I had no idea just how far behind the Chinese Navy was relative to ours. It's not even a comparison.
Yeah, we've got way more boats now, but you've got 1/3 of our tonnage.
And you've got aircraft carriers with 18-inch splits in the deck from port to starboard.
brand new aircraft carriers
And
with
it's brand new,
broken decks.
exactly.
That's what happens when you buy your Navy from Wish.com.
I thought it was Timu. No,
That's what
Alibaba.
Wish. That's the bare bottom of the barrel.
All right. So those are three pretty big things as far as providing an update on terrorism is concerned. Mike, bring us back to your conflicted question of the day, and let's see if we can put our morality on the line here.
Okay, back to our
Keith,
hey, I'll tell you what, listeners and everybody, we love doing this with you guys. But what we need more of you to answer. We need your answers down below. I'm not seeing a whole lot of people put their money where their mouth is on this stuff. We pull these out. Come on, I want to see you guys throw into there. And while you're at it, like, subscribe, push the button. Anything that we can do to stick it to the overlords.
do the things.
Do the things. So, all right. After months of bugging out with your best friend, you realize that the food and water supply is getting low. And upon further investigation, you find that your best friend has been selling the food and water for money and ammunition. Where's that ammunition going? But not telling anyone else. He is putting you and your family at risk as well as himself. How would you handle his betrayal? And
All right,
go.
Best friends can be idiots, right? But they're still our best friend. He's putting us at risk, but are you really going to throw your best friend out of your collective and throw him to the wolves? Are you really going to, you might beat the crap out of him? You're definitely not going to throw him out. You're definitely not going to, I know some people are out there, I'd execute him. Man, I'm glad I'm not your friend. All right. Plus it's just immoral and ungodly. So it comes back to like, you're just going to have to find a secure place for the rest of whatever water you have and whatever food you have. He's not allowed to have access to it, and you control it to where he doesn't have access, and you lock it up in a way. You start monitoring your friend. But you probably had a lot of trust in him. And then the other thing too is you got to monitor or have some self-reflection. Is he my best friend, or is he taking advantage of me? If he's taking advantage of you and he's not really your friend, well then yeah, you're going to have to give him the boot and send him on his way. But if it truly is like my best friend, and we were in the Army together, back to the 820th with me and Mike, right? We were in Alpha Company together. He was best man at my wedding. We've been friends for 35, 36 years. Yeah, we're friends. I'm not kicking him out. We're going to monitor what we're doing and lock down my food and water. If your best friend you just met recently, you might want to reevaluate that friendship and then decide if you're going to keep them or not.
And that's it. My personal opinion is that a best friend would not betray you in this type of manner. I wouldn't advocate taking the guy out or anything like that, but what it probably would do would be to organize a breakaway for my family to get away from this guy when he's not expecting it, and take all the supplies with us, and he can fend for himself at that point in time. Because I think once you've been betrayed to that level, it's pretty hard to ever trust somebody like that again. And I hear what you're saying, lock up your stores and stuff like that. I go back to distance is safety. So I would want to put distance between my family, this particular individual who I would not consider a best friend, and do it in such a manner that it all went down before he realized what happened.
Well, I think the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to sit him down, because I shall not cast stones. We have all screwed up in the past. We all get a little crazy sometimes. So the first thing that I'm going to want to know is, why? Why are you getting a whole bunch of ammunition? What do you that I don't know?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Good point.
Why are you going behind me instead of bringing me in on this? Right. I need to know that. And that's going to determine, are you going to stay or are you going to go? Right. If you're doing this for the betterment of us, if you're doing this for an actual reason, you screwed up on how you did it, but not why you did it. I get it. Okay. And then he's not going to have access to anything. He can stay, but he's not going to have access to anything. And then we're going to have to work from there. So I'm with you on that one at that point, Keith. Now, if he just flipped his lid, if he has gotten to the point where he's gotten to a mental break point and he snapped, or he's lost his moral compass or something like that, right? Now I'm going to determine if this guy is still my best friend. If he's not my best friend anymore, sorry, man, you got to go. And you're going out into the wilderness in your underwear. and we're going to remain mobile. You've forfeited all this stuff, and then we are going to have to figure out how to do this. If your family wants to stay with us, they can stay with us because they were not responsible for what you did. We'll continue to take care of them, but you can't stay. It's my two-pronged answer.
Can I circle back for a minute? Because you bring up good points, right? I guess I'm looking at it from the view of, I'm thinking, like when you say best friend, I'm thinking of my literal best friend right now. Everybody, I think, should think, who's your best friend? And what would I do for that specific person? And then for my friend, look, he is part of my plan. If something were to happen, he's part of my overall defense plan and survival plan. With that said, we have to remember if you have that deep rooted good friendship, find out why that happened. And if it was because he was stupid, you just got to remember forgiveness and grace. You want to receive the same mercy and grace that you expect, and then just figure out a plan to correct that so that you don't die from this stupid mistake.
All right, guys. Appreciate your time. Thank you for the updates on terrorism and the interesting answers to conflicted. We'll catch you all on the next one.
I'm Jason Salyer with Survival Dispatch, and when disaster strikes, will you be ready? Power outages, natural disasters, economic collapse, and the knowledge, the skills, and equipment necessary to protect your family when it really, really matters. You can gain instant access to our team of survival experts, stockpiling food, medical necessities, communication plans, proven techniques to help you get home, shelter in place, or bug out safely. Don't leave your family's safety to chance. Visit survivaldispatch.com to get started.